if a well-wisher from amongst those allies of Rigathi Gachagua who are surrounding him, if one of them will be touched by God and take Rigathi Gachagua to Mathare Mental Hospital, I can assure you a file will be opened and the Rigathi Gachagua will be admitted. I want to politely ask our former second lady, Mama Boyce, Pastor Dorcas, that if you love your husband, kindly consider check him in a mental facility. Take him to Mathare. You can take him to South Africa or abroad in one of the best mental hospitals, so that our former deputy president can have his mental instability checked. And I can assure you, even if the person who will examine Rigathi Gachagua is an intern psychiatrist, he will be admitted.
Tumebahatika leo katika makala yetu ya kuchambua mambo ambayo yanaendelea katika taifa la Kenya, na tuko na bahati ya kukutana naye mbunge wa Kimilili Didmus Barasa. Asante sana kwa kutukaribisha. Tunataka tuangazie mambo machache kwanza katika yanayoendelea katika taifa la Kenya. Lakini kwanza hebu tuambie umekuwa vipi wewe?
Mimi nimekuwa sawa, najiandaa kuondoka siku ya kesho kuenda mashinani, kuendeleza pilika zangu za kutangamana na wananchi watukufu wa Kimilili na Bungoma.
Naam, wananchi wa Kimilili wa jambo, Bungoma wa jambo.
Wa jambo, licha kwamba kuna baadhi yao ambao pengine wanaugua, wengine wamepoteza watu wao wa karibu, na hiyo ndio hali ya maisha ya kwamba kila siku kuna wale ambao wanaugua, wanahangaika na pilika za maisha za hapa na pale. Yote tisa, Bungoma iko sawa.
Wakati huu bunge iko kwenye recess ama likizo fupi, sijui kama mbunge, najua mambo shughuli za bunge kwanza huja namba moja. Sijui kabla muende kwenye recess ama baada ya kutoka kwenye recess kwenye likizo, shughuli gani labda Wakenya watarajie katika bunge ambalo mambo yanakuja?
Yale ambayo yanakuja katika bunge la kitaifa msimu huu wa bajeti ni kuweza kupika msasa yale makadirio ya bajeti ya mwaka 2025-2026 ambayo kamati tofauti za bunge zimeisha piga msasa. Sasa tutakuwa tunangojea katika pilika hizo za kupitisha bajeti ya mwaka ambao unakuja, muhula wa 2025-2026, na vile pia tuweza pia tupiga msasa yale mapendekezo ya serikali ambayo watakuwa wakileta katika bunge la kitaifa, yale maarufu finance bill, ile ambayo itaoneshana njia ama mbinu ambayo serikali itatumia kuweza kupata pesa ya kufadhili yale mapendekezo ambayo yanapatikana katika bajeti ya mwaka 2025-2026.
Mwaka jana bila shaka kulikuwa na mambo makubwa sana yalitokea katika ile finance bill 2024, mambo ya bajeti. Sijui kama wabunge ambao ni wawakilishi wa wananchi pale bungeni, umejiandaa vipi, na sawa wewe kama mbunge ambao uko katika mrengo wa serikali, umejiandaa vipi ili mwaka huu wa 2025 kusikue na marudio ya yale yaliyotokea mwaka jana?
Kama bunge la kitaifa, yale mapendekezo ambayo tumeweza kubuni na kuyatia katika mikakati zetu kuhakikisha kwamba hatuwezi tena kamwe kuweza kupitisha finance bill ambayo Wakenya wengi hawataki, ni kuweza kupanua viwanja ya public participation, kwamba mbinu ambayo wananchi watakuwa wanatoa maoni. Mara hii tumeweza kupanua, uliona vile tumefanya public participation katika sheria ya CDF, kwamba kwa kila afisi ya CDF ama afisi ya mbunge tutakuwa tumeyafungua yale afisi zile, ili Wakenya wakuwa wanatoa maoni, na si tu maoni peke yao ambayo tutakuwa tunataka kuiangazia, kwamba bunge la kitaifa kuenda mbele itakuwa pia inayatilia maanani yale mapendekezo ambayo Wakenya watakuwa wanatoa, hivi kwamba Wakenya wakisema kwamba hawapendi hiki, tutakuwa tunaangalia asilimia ya wale ambao wanapinga. Kama wale ambao wanapinga asilimia ni zaidi ya 50, tutaweza kutupilia mbali yale mapendekezo ya marekebisho ambayo tutakuwa tunayafanya. Kwa hivyo hiyo ndio tofauti na vile tulivyokuwa tukifanya maneno yetu ya kama bunge la kitaifa miaka zilizopita ama nyakati zilizopita, kwamba ilikuwa tunaweka tu kwenye gazeti rasmi la serikali. Wakenya wachache ndio wangekuwa na nafasi ya kutuma maoni yao, lakini hivi sasa tumeweza kuexpand ile viwango vya wale wa Kenya ambao watakuwa wanajitokeza kutoa maoni kulingana na sheria tofauti za bunge la kitaifa.
Wakati ule ambaye tayari public participation ile kwenye constituency level ilikuwa imeanza tayari, lakini nakumbuka mwaka jana lile swala lilikuwa swala kuu lilishirikishwa kwenye public participation. Wengi wa Wakenya walisema labda ilikuwa influence ama yale maoni yao walitolewa hayakuzingatiwa katika bunge.
Unajua, finance bill ambayo tulioifanya katika awamu ya muhula wa makadirio ya pesa ya 2024-2025 yalikuwa katika hali ngumu sana ya kisiasa. Unakizia ya kwamba muungano wote wa NASA, hasa chama cha ODM, walikuwa wanapinga serikali. Tulikuwa tunapingana nao vikali. Unajua, kawaida wale ambao wapinzani wa serikali huwa hawaangazii yale mazuri ambayo katika sheria, lakini wanaangazia yale ambayo ndio mabaya. Kwa kimombo tunasema opposition to the government have got no business amplifying the gains and the benefit of a bill. That is the work of the government itself, but their main role is to amplify the areas where they think are grey, the areas that they think are not good, and that it will earn them some bonga points before Kenyans if they come out to not to oppose and not to support. Lakini maneno siasa yote kuanzia sasa imebadilika. Wale ambao waliokuwa wakipinga ile finance bill ya mwaka uliopita, wengine wao ndio sasa waziri wa fedha, ndio mwenye kusimamia masuala ya treasury yote. Sasa wale ambao walikuwa minority wakati ile ya kupinga, sasa hao ndio wanatengeneza sheria yenyewe hivyo. So we are in a completely different political environment, na sitarajii kwamba yale tuliyoyapitia mwaka uliopita tunaweza kuyapitia mwaka huu, kwa sababu saa hii tuko na political goodwill, na waziri ambaye anahusika na kutengeneza ile sheria ya fedha amefungua ofisi yake kwa maoni ya Wakenya wengi. Si tu kwamba unakuja na sheria ndio unakwenda kutoa maoni ya Wakenya. Ni vizuri vile Mbadi amefanya, kwamba kabla ya kuunda zile sheria amekuwa akiengage various institutions kwamba apate mawazo yao ndio aweze kukarabati ile sheria yenyewe. You know, that is what makes the whole difference between the finance bill of yesterday and the current finance bill that we are doing. That the finance bill of yesterday, it was done under the leadership of a minister who did not operate within an open door policy. He never engaged experts before coming up with that proposal. But what John Mbadi is doing, and what the government of Kenya is doing presently, is that they are engaging various opinion leaders, various institutions that are very key in so far as the economy of this country is concerned. So by tapping into what they have to say, it actually improves the proposal itself. That before a proposal is tabled in Parliament for debate and consideration, at least it has encompassed some thinking of Kenyans, so that when we will now take it for public participation, utaona kwamba tayari iko na maoni ya Wakenya ndani. So na pia tutaangazia yale mapendekezo ambao Wakenya watatoa.
Jinsi unavyosema, labda unamaanisha ni kama una oversee ama unaona mambo mwaka huu yataenda shwari. Iwapo labda kutakuwa na tofauti za kimaoni kutokea either kwa wananchi ama kwa wanasiasa ama political class ama opposition. Sijui kama upande wa serikali na pale bungeni mnatarajia kuhandle aje ndio maana kusitokee na zogo ama crisis.
Bunge la kitaifa na nchi ya Kenya kwa jumla ni nchi ya kidemokrasia. Maanake ni kwamba wengi wape, wachache wasikize. Kwa kimombo tunasema that the minority will have their say and the majority will have their way. And we will debate this bill on the basis of how we are persuaded in terms of what benefit it brings to Kenyans. And just echoing the statements by Treasury, they had indicated that this finance bill may not necessarily propose any further tax measures, maybe tax reliefs in terms of the very many taxes that we approved. There is a team that does monitoring and evaluation. Maybe if there's a report from the team that does monitoring and evaluation of our policies, we'll be able to do a report that can result into reviewing of some taxes downwards. I think we will be happy. But Treasury has indicated that so far the available taxes and the available ways of raising revenue is enough to sustain our budget. And I think also I also want to laud the government approach to use the pension from Kenyans, to borrow pension from Kenyans and fund various development projects. It happens all over the world. If you go to America, you go to England, you go to China, you go to Germany. The other week I was in Australia, and I interrogated the Australian government of raising revenue without borrowing expensive loans from IMF, World Bank, and other development partners that comes with stringent conditions that doesn't favor the great citizens of our country, is that you borrow the pension that Kenyans give. And all we need to do is to assist government be able to come up with a very clear policy that also makes some money available for Kenyans who are retiring, so that when Kenyans retire, they should be able to access their NSSF savings without any delay. And we just need to put in a system that will ensure that even as the government borrows money from NSSF to do our roads, we are doing it in a manner that we are cognizant of those who will be retiring in the next 6 months, 7 months, or 3 months, to ensure that their savings are available, not to jeopardize their ability to access these NSSF savings that they want. Because Rome was not built in a day, but was built by the Romans. I think there is nothing wrong from when the government borrows the NSSF money, because we have got laws in our country that guides contribution to NSSF and how an individual can access these NSSF funds. So, for example, if you have a young people who are between the age of 20 and 45 who are not near in retiring, the money which they are contributing, instead of this money lying somewhere idle, some of this money, mismanaged by the trustees, by NSSF trustees, by investing in things which doesn't bring much profit, this money should be available to be borrowed by government so that we can be able to develop our country. We have the capacity as Kenyans to develop our country. And when we say that the population of our country being over 40 million people is not a weakness but a strength, what we mean therefore is that we can actually use the money which Kenyans are contributing to NSSF to borrow this money, develop our roads, provide the necessary infrastructure that will provide an enabling environment for Kenyans who do business to thrive, for Kenyans who are agriculturalists, who are venturing in agribusiness, for them to thrive by ensuring that we open up our rural areas so that our rural areas can be accessible by very many institutions that provides ready market for various agricultural products that are produced in our country. So by so doing, I think it's also going to ensure that we do not increase taxes for the Kenyans.
Kuna swala pia, the issue of the debt ceiling. Do you think Kenyans keep asking themselves, why do we keep borrowing? Why do we keep borrowing? Other than the idea where you're suggesting government should borrow internally and just take from the funds that are available, kama hiyo mambo ya NSSF. Sijui kama wabunge mnaonelea vipi jinsi wa Kenya wana complain government is borrowing too much. Nyinyi kama ambao mko pale ku oversight. Sijui mambo haya yanaenda vipi.
You know, there is no country that can avoid borrowing in its entirety. And when we came in as Kenya Kwanza government, when William Ruto was sworn in as president, we had very expensive commercial loans that the previous regime already plunged our country in. Kulikuwa na madeni ambayo tayari serikali ilikuwa imekopa, na vile unavyojua ama vile Wakenya wanavyojua ni kwamba government exists in perpetuity. Hata kama ile serikali ndiye sio hii serikali ambayo iliweza kuchukua ile madeni, serikali ina jukumu ya kuendeleza sera zake za kusonga mbele, na ndio sababu serikali hii kile ambacho imefanya kwamba imeweza kwenda kuboro loans ambazo sio kali. What the government has done is that because they already existed very expensive loans with very huge interest that our previous regime had plunged our country in, and the country was almost slipping into the debt distress, almost defaulting. So what our government did is to go and borrow cheap loans, negotiate cheap loans with low interest rates, offset these very expensive ones, so that the country cannot be in the debt distress. That is basically what happens. Kwa lugha ya rahisi ya Kiswahili ni kwamba kwa mfano kama mimi niko na deni yako ya shilingi 10,000 na wewe unanidai kwamba hilo shilingi 10,000, tuseme shilingi milioni 10 ambayo nimeboro kutoka kwako, na interest rate yako kwa mfano ni 30% kwa mwaka, na nimefika pahali kama mtu binafsi kwamba siwezi mudu kulipa pesa hizo na ile interest ya 30% kwa mwaka, na pengine nimemtafuta bana mwingine ameniambia kwamba anaweza akanipatia pesa ile shilingi milioni 10 ya kulipa hii deni ambayo wewe unanidai, na ile pesa milioni 10 ambayo atanipatia pengine aniambie nitaweza kulipa kwa interest ya 5%. So hiyo pia itaweza kunipunguzia gharama ya hiyo interest ya 30%. So that is basically what the government of Kenya did. Kwamba kulikuwa tayari na deni ambayo interest rate yake, kiwango ya riba ilikuwa juu zaidi. Kwa hivyo serikali ya Kenya ilienda kachukua madeni mengine ikanegotiate riba ya chini, na tukaweza kulipa zile madeni ambazo zilikuwa very expensive, so that the country can now stabilized, so that our economy can now begin to breathe. You know, our economy was struggling with the financial epilepsy. Our country was struggling with the financial epilepsy because of the loans that His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta plunged our country in. And what we did as a government is to go and negotiate equivalent cheaper loans from our development partners, so that we can offset those very expensive loans and stabilize our economy. Now our economy is a bit stable. Even from when I look at the way you've dressed, is not the way you were dressed when I met with you 1 year ago. Today you appear a little bit more smart, and it's also meaning that you are feeling these are the effects of a resurrected economy. Because when the economy is struggling almost at her bottom, many Kenyans will have to bear with the brunt of our struggling economy. But at least now our economy has been stabilized. We are no longer in the debt distress, and the country is moving on steady to the pedestal of where we can all say that the Kenya Kwanza government had this in their manifesto, and they have actually fulfilled whatever they said they will do for this country.
Na mheshimiwa, kando na mambo ya finance bill na economy ya Kenya, swala ambalo pia linakuja kwenye bunge ni mambo ya vetting ya IEBC commissioners na chair. Jana wiki hii tumeona kwamba kuna watu mashirika na watu binafsi wameweza kujaribu kusimamisha ile process ama ile process ya nyinyi kama wabunge kufanya vetting. Sijui kama unaonaje swala hili na itaweza kujeopardize ama kusimamisha mambo ya uchaguzi kufanyika. Kuna by elections ambazo zinatakana kufanyika, kuna uchaguzi ambao wa mwaka 2027 pia vile vile unafaa uanze kupangiwa mapema. Sijui kama mbunge unaonaje swala hili?
Nafikiria, to be very honest and fair, our country has plunged into what we call judicial activism, where judges issue orders that are completely not in line with our efforts to stabilize our country. A country that doesn't have a fully functioning IEBC commissioners can easily plunge into a constitutional crisis. Kenyans from areas that do not have an MCA, a member of parliament, have a constitutional right to be represented. And failure to have a fully functioning IEBC commissioners, I think, creates some kind of a violation. It violates the rights of Kenyans who are coming from those wards that are not represented at the various county assemblies. The country today, as we speak now, is undergoing budget preparations, where various elected leaders are making advances on behalf of the people that elected them on what should actually be included in the budget. And the areas where there is no member of parliament, the areas where there is no member of the county assembly, I think we should all agree that their rights are being violated by failure to have an individual whom they have elected who can take their interest to the county assembly or their interest to the National Assembly, especially at this very important cycle in our country of activities to share the national cake. The national cake is shared in the National Assembly, where members of parliament from 290 constituencies scramble to have a share for their constituencies, including those who are nominated. They are also nominated to represent specific institutions and specific categories of people. They also need to begin to make recommendations that will favor the people they represent. And by so doing, I'm just hoping that, of course, as Parliament, we will move with the speed to be able to process the names that were forwarded to us by His Excellency the President within the shortest route possible. When the report will come in, the House Business Committee will prioritize debate and the processing of those names so that our country can have a fully functioning IEBC. And it is on this spirit of constitutionalism, the spirit of safeguarding the interest of the Kenyan people, that I would urge our courts and our judiciary, for once, not to be victims of judicial activism by just flying out orders to stop a government process. They should be driven by the bigger picture of Kenyans from those constituencies who would not even have their representatives, and they should actually shield IEBC from political interference, because we have people who are hell-bent to use IEBC to resurrect their already stifled political career. We have individuals in our country who have for very many years sacrificed our economic gains for cheap political reasons. Because if you listen to those who are challenging the legitimacy of IEBC commissioners, they have no point. These commissioners are Kenyans. And they went through a rigorous interview process to where they are today now here. Somebody challenging their suitability. I think it is high time we as Kenyans, and I think the problem that we face as Kenyans is because of too much freedom that our constitution birthed. You know, we have too much freedom. The constitution which we have currently in Kenya was written by activists. You know, activists are people who live in some kind of utopia. These are people who always build castles in the air. African countries don't require 100% freedom. You know, where people can say what they want. You know, even people can go to court and say that even gayism is they should need to be recognized. They have a right. LGBTQ, all these kind of things. You know, we have opened up our country for abuse. You know, and I think from where I sit, we must have a government that only shares power with the other arms of government, but limits the freedom of Kenyans not to be allowed to an extent where some people do whatever they think is right for them. We, as a country, we must change. As a people, we must change. That whatever I do is not just about myself, but it should be cognizant of my neighbors. It should be cognizant of other Kenyans whom we are sharing the country. You know, and I don't envy what Samia Suluhu did by deporting activists from Kenya. You know, in Kenya, Kenya has become a country of we are not promoting innovation. Kenya as a country, we should promote innovation, where our young people are more innovative, they are more in creative industry by trying to drive our innovation system, our innovation culture. But I'm surprised. Kenya as a country, we are raising activists. We are promoting activism. Everybody in Kenya is an activist. You know, it's an activist. A country that has 70% of her population being activist, that country is doomed. Activism is, if you look at the Kenyan activism, the Kenyan activism is driven by individuals who are disillusioned, individuals maybe who failed in life, individuals maybe who are suffering from culture shock, individuals who, of course, we have a few individuals in Kenya like Boniface Mwangi who have made their millions through activism by soliciting for funds from some donors, you know, where if they receive 10 million, they will spend $1 million, you know, paying some young people to become a bit rowdy somewhere, lock the gate of some government office somewhere else, take pictures and justify why they should get more pay. But we should move away from activism to promoting innovation in our country. You know, and me, I'm just happy what Samia Suluhu did by deporting those activists who had gone to Tanzania. To do what in Tanzania? even in within our diplomatic cause, we have diplomatic code of conduct. We can't be proud as a country that we are exporting activists to our neighboring countries. I will be proud Kenyan as a country if we are exporting agricultural products, if we are exporting our human resources, But I can never be proud as a Kenyan that Kenya as a country, we have evolved to the level where we are beginning to export activists to various countries. We can't do those kind of things.
You have said this is not judicial oversight, ni judicial overreach. What do you think the IEBC can do to build public confidence? Kwa sababu tayari naona watu wanasema commissioners were the public interviews of the commissioners was just a publicity stunt by, say, the president and Raila Odinga, who's now part of government, to recruit commissioners that would be into their favor. As a political player yourself, Mheshimiwa Didmus, do you think IEBC, who sits at the IEBC office, can help influence winning or losing an election? And what can the IEBC do to build a public confidence once it's constituted?
I think as a country, we are reading too much into IEBC commissioners. We are being too much individualistic, you know. And the integrity of an electoral system is not in the commissioners. It is in our electoral system. The system that prescribes how a voter is registered, how a voter is identified, how a voter is given a ballot, and how a casted vote by a voter is counted, relayed, and announced. That is a system. I think as Kenyans, we seem not to trust IEBC because our focus is on wrong personalities. We must begin to interrogate the electoral systems. A system should be designed to a level that it doesn't matter who is a commissioner. It doesn't matter who is a CEO. So I want to urge Kenyans to let IEBC commissioners be, and if you want to offer justice to our country, then we must focus on reviewing that system. Straight from voter enlistment, voter identification, how a ballot is cast, how the counting, and the relaying of the results to the National Tallying Center. That is what we should focus on as a country. You know, and we want to, as a country, I think we should invest in systems so that it doesn't matter who's the chairman of IEBC. It doesn't matter whether the commissioner is from this tribe or from that tribe. And once we do that, then you will realize that it doesn't matter who is the chairman of IEBC that makes a difference on who wins the election. It's about the system. The system should be made in a way that no one can manipulate it. Look at the point. And our government is just suffering from some collateral damage because the president comes from a particular subtribe. So when he comes from a particular subtribe, then all those commissioners who have a name that suggests they come from the same subtribe, they are disadvantaged, including those who are perceived to have who worked with him either in the party or somewhere, or they were friends. You know, that is detrimental to our government, to our country. You know, our countries, we must mature. The same way we are saying that our democracy has matured to a level that is admirable globally, Kenyans also need to mature. We need to change our way of thinking to a level that we should not be petty, focusing on the tribe of an individual, focusing on the association of an individual, focusing on who worked with who is a lawyer for who. Those are things which they should not determine the suitability of a commissioner. The suitability of a commissioner should be pegged on their academic credentials, their past experiences, and their integrity as an individual. But it should have nothing to do with their surname that suggests where they come from. It should have nothing to do with their history of work experience in terms of they worked with who. We can't advance forward as a country if we keep holed up in such kind of a hole. You know, it doesn't mean that anybody who is serving as the commissioners and as a name that suggests he comes from the region with the leader of opposition, then we can say that the leader of opposition will manipulate him. We should mature beyond the tenets in the thinking that if a commissioner is Kamba, then Kalonzo Musyoka will manipulate that particular commissioner. That is hogwash. That is balderdash. We should mature as a country to the level where we need to trust Kenyans, regardless of their surname. Whether their surname begins with an O, begins with an S, we should trust that Kenyans will do a good job. And the difference between Western countries, of course, you see, as African countries, we try to emulate Western countries. The difference between African countries and Western countries, the reason as to why African countries have continued to lag behind in terms of development and even democracy, where we have wars in African countries, where we have post-election violence, where we have chaos every time, where we have even coup d'etats dominating our history, is because of the thinking that a person who comes from this tribe, he will favor a presidential candidate who comes from his tribe. You know? While Kenyans are saying that we should not be tribal, while Kenyans are always singing that we should have equal opportunities as a country, regardless of where you come from, whether you are a Luo, you are a Luya, or wherever, as long as you are a Kenyan, you have a national ID card, then we should live in a country that affords us equal opportunities. Is the same way I'm also asking Kenyans that we should run away from that parochial and cheap thinking that an IEBC commissioner from a particular community would favor a presidential candidate who shares the same surname with his or her, or who comes from the same ethnic background. We should not invest too much in the people. We should invest in the system. When the system is watertight, it doesn't matter who is the IEBC commissioner. It doesn't matter who the chairman of IEBC. It doesn't matter the age. And I think we must have a paradigm shift in the way we look at things, so that as a country and the African continent, we should begin to invest in systems so that it doesn't matter who's president. Kenyans will still get development. It doesn't matter who's the chairman of IEBC. Kenyans will get a free, fair, and verifiable electoral process that will get leaders that will have been voted in on the basis of their manifesto. That is what I think is ailing our country. What is ailing our country is not corruption. What ails our country is not taxes. What ails our country is not what many people think that our constitution. What ails the Republic of Kenya is the way of thinking of Kenyans. Our thinking should never be hogwash. where people are condemned because of where they come from, where Kenyans feel that so and so is not fit to be the chairman of IEBC, or to be a commissioner of IEBC, or to be a CEO of a particular company because of where he comes from. Today in Kenya, if the president is from your tribe, even those people who get jobs due to merit, people will quick to say that because the head of state comes from their tribe, so they were assisted. So we must change our thinking. Once we change our thinking as Kenyans, then we will have the Kenya that we will all be proud of. We will have the Kenya that will provide an equal opportunity for everybody. And we will have the Kenya we want. The Kenya we want will never come if we don't change our way of thinking.
Lastly, on the Kalonzo Musyoka had said some of the processes that the Nadco report had recommended were violated. Na sasa yeye amesema he wants to be consulted before, he wanted actually to be consulted before the IEBC commissioners were named or their names were forwarded to parliament.
I think Kalonzo Musyoka, insofar as IEBC is concerned, the problem is Kalonzo Musyoka. Kalonzo Musyoka participated in Nadco, and the report came out. We agreed as leaders to reconstitute the IEBC selection panel so that we can incorporate the recommendations of Nadco insofar as the route to get these members of the selection panel is concerned. Political parties forwarded the names of their representative. By then, Wiper party leader was in Azimio. So Azimio forwarded a name. Then later on, when Wiper fell out with ODM, and there were complaints about whether Azimio still existed or not, Wiper went to court to challenge the composition of the selection panel. Actually, he managed to obtain an order to stop the selection panel because his argument was that the person apparently, in quotes, who represents Eastern or who represents the Wiper stronghold was not forwarded by Wiper. The leaders listened to him and they gave him an opportunity to forward the name of his long-term ally, Dr. Kokimuli. So he was satisfied, and the selection panel was constituted. It moves forward to the level where an advertisement was made. People send in their application letters to be chair of IEBC and members of the IEBC commission. The interviews were done on TV. People appeared before the interview. Nobody raised an issue until when, of course, when the names now are forwarded to the president, so that the president can pick and forward them to the National Assembly for vetting and approval. Kalonzo Musyoka reserves and says, I should be consulted. Kalonzo Musyoka is just exposing the problem that very many Kenyans have. That you think that the person who will win the presidency will be aided by the chairman of IEBC. And that because of where one comes from, you know, you can't really have faith. That the ability for you to have faith in IEBC is not pegged on the qualifications of the chairman, but is based on the commonalities in terms of where this person comes from. Does he come from the same region with the incumbent president? So if they come from the same region, then you begin to think that the incumbent, who is actually the sitting president, may have had a chance in manipulating. The only chance that the president have in choosing who should be the chairman of IEBC is from the names forwarded to him by an independent selection panel. That is the only area, we gave the head of state the constitutional powers and mandate to choose a name from the names forwarded to him by an independent IEBC selection panel. I am 100% sure if following the same process and the IEBC chairperson that the head of state could have picked, if that person was Kamba, Kalonzo Musyoka would have had no problem. Because of the mentality of tribalism in his head. Because of the mentality of thinking that I can only trust a person if that person is a member of my community. If that person comes from a member of my community. I am 100% sure, because the chair of IEBC that has been proposed by President to us members of Parliament to approve comes from the same region with the President. So Kalonzo Musyoka is thinking that he will aid William Ruto in winning his re-election. I am also sure if that person was a Luo, Kalonzo Musyoka could imagine that that Luo will kind of support Raila Odinga to be president. I believe that the only problem that Kalonzo is having with the proposed IEBC chair and commissioners is because they are not Kambas. That is the problem of Kalonzo Musyoka. It is unfortunate that in our country we do not have a gadget that you can put on your hat so that you can be able to come up with a true recommendation of what is making this person behave this way. Because what makes Kalonzo behave the way he is behaving by opposing the whole process, it is not based on meritocracy or on anything else. If it's about merit, these people are overqualified. But the reason why Kalonzo Musyoka is opposing these people is because they are not campus. I ask the party leader of Wiper, our former vice president, please stop being tribal. For once, remove tribal lenses and see these people as qualified Kenyans, Kenyans of reputable character that can deliver a reputable election before our country. Let us shift our discussions from discussing about personalities and let's begin to discuss about systems that can be put in IEBC, systems that are for posterity, systems that are watertight, that cannot be manipulated by an individual, so that Kenyans can spare their energy from this wanton tribalism which you are perpetuating so clearly. Because when you are given an opportunity as the Wiper party leader to nominate a member to the IEBC panel, you never nominated Raluya, you never nominated Raluo, you fronted a name of your fellow Kamba because you seem not to believe that anybody can be trusted apart from a member of your tribe. Please, for once, Your Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, smelled the coffee and lead from the front as a leader. The same way we are advocating for a seamless Africa, for a borderless Africa, for a borderless East Africa, we should have a borderless Kenya, where the tribal barriers should not dominate our minds when faced with a decision to choose on who is qualified to be the chair of IEBC or not. For once, Honorable Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, I beseech you as your son. I politely ask you, don't be tribal, don't be watermelon. Let Kenya have a fully functioning IEBC And let's shift our discussion from discussing personalities at IEBC and begin to discuss about systems, policies, and procedures that can engineer our electoral reforms.
Naam, still on the election issues, Mheshimiwa, wiki iliyopita aliyekuwa naibu wa rais Rigathi Gachagua ameweza kuanzisha chama chake anakiita DCP. Realignments za mwaka 2027 zimeanza kutokea. We kama mbunge wa ruling party, sijui ruling coalition, sijui mnaona vipi ile formation ya hiyo chama? Do you think it is going to eat up into President William Ruto's support base na ku-affect maybe re-election yake 2027?
Mimi naona tuko na vyama vingi vya kisiasa hapa Kenya, na chama ambacho kiliundwa na naibu rais hivi majuzi, mimi sina shida na hicho chama. Shida yangu tu ni kwamba we need to have a discussion as Kenyans as to whether a person who left office by way of impeachment is allowed by our laws to be a party leader of a political party. When you are a party leader of a political party, that party should be led by an individual who is not an impeachee. When you are impeached, you are not fit to hold public office. You are not even fit to chair a funeral committee. You should not be allowed. So that's my only problem. But but about forming parties, the only difference between that party and UDA and ODM is that that is a tribal party. It's not a national party. Because if you look at the objectives on why that party was formed, if the statements by Rigathi Gachagua is something to go by, it appears that is a Central Kenya party, because he has been saying that the people of Central Kenya have been duped because they went to government without their own political party. So he has formed a party for the Central Kenya according to his to his intellect. And I think if you look at the way former deputy president is conducting himself, I want to tell you without blinking an eye that if a well-wisher from amongst those allies of Rigathi Gachagua who are surrounding him, if one of them would be touched by God and take Rigathi Gachagua to Mathare Mental Hospital, I can assure you a file will be opened and the Rigathi Gachagua will be admitted. It's only that the people around him are living in denial, and I want to politely ask the likes of Senator Methu, the likes of George Mutu, the likes of Cleophas Malala, that let's be brother's keeper. Let them take the mental instability of our former deputy president with the seriousness that it takes. I want to politely ask our former second lady, Mama Boyce, Pastor Dorcas, that if you love your husband, kindly consider check him in a mental facility. Take him to Mathare. You can take him to South Africa or abroad in one of the best mental hospitals, so that our former deputy president can have his mental instability checked. Because the way he's saying, the statements he makes, I come from a region that was affected by 2007, 2008 post-election violence. I come from an area where when you are you can only access that area from Nairobi through either Eldoret or Kericho. I saw bodies of human beings lying on road when you drive. At times even you are blocked by bodies of dead people. I have had an opportunity to follow up what happened in Darfur, Central Africa Republic, in Bangui, Democratic Republic of Congo. I was in this country when there were wars in Yugoslavia, in Afghanistan, in Iraq. I know what it means by having peace after elections. I know regarding Gachagua, I served with him in the National Assembly for 5 years. I know what he can say and what he can't say. His utterances recently points to a person with mental instability. I ask Pastor Dorcas, if you love your husband, please take him to a mental facility for checkup, and I can assure you, even if the person who will examine Rigathi Gachagua is an intern psychiatrist, he will be admitted. He will be admitted. Those are signs of a person with some mental instability.
Mheshimiwa, with that party being formed, the utterances and all the political whatever aside, do you think this could eat up into President William Ruto's election basket and re-election bid in 2027?
I could have only commented about whether this newly formed party by our former deputy president will eat into our support or not, if I could have listened to their manifesto, if I could have listened to their plan, if I could have at least known who is going to fly their party flag insofar as running for president is concerned. Because a party is not a name. A party is personalities around the party. A party is individuals. Tomorrow, if Raila Odinga leaves ODM, ODM will die, will become a shell. So ODM is not ODM. ODM is Raila Amolo Odinga. UDA is not UDA. UDA is William Samoei Ruto and the personalities around it. So looking at the personalities around this newly formed party by a former deputy president, I've seen the personalities around there. I can tell you, if I form a party tomorrow, as Didmus Barasa, and I begin to have a contest with them in terms of popularity, I can't lose sleep. If myself as an individual, I can't lose sleep. If I were running against the personalities that are surrounded this newly formed party by a former deputy president, then I can tell you William Ruto, Kenya Kwanza would not lose any sleep because of this party.
Finally, on the opposition aspect, there's also the re-emergence of former CS Fred Matiang'i, who as well has said he wants to form a party. I think it's called OPA or something, or come into the political fore with that party of OPA. What do you think of his re-emergence?
I think the kind of a person and my ambitions to run for governor of Bungoma and the respect I have in this country, I'm not going to discuss a person of Fred Matiang'i and his party because it's not my equal, it's not of my level, and not that I am disrespecting him, but you and me knows that I don't think if Fred Matiang'i can even win an MCA seat in Iborabu where he comes from. I don't think so. These are people who have who stole too much money during their tenure, and they are just being itched by the too much money they have to bloat their ego to begin imagining that they can be president of the Republic of Kenya.
Mheshimiwa, let's get closer home, a bit closer home. You obviously mentioned your ambitions of becoming Bungoma governor. Let's start with an issue that has been quite in the forefront this week, the issue of Zoya Sugar and the lease on Zoya Sugar. I have followed some of your activities, and I saw you went into an engagement with members of the public to try enlighten them. Sijui mambo haya yamefika vipi? Kuna wabunge pia wamejitokeza wengi kutoka region ya Western Kenya, Bungoma County. Wamejitokeza kusema the lease is the government is hiding something behind the lease. It is not a lease to help the sugarcane farmer, to help the farmer around Zoya and the entire Bungoma County to sell their produce, but actually it is an aspect either to take the land that belongs to Zoya Sugar or just to take the assets that belong to Zoya Sugar. I don't know what you...
You know, a decision must come from an objective. And an objective must be designed to solve a particular public problem. So ask yourself, the objective to revive Zoya, the objective and the decision to lease Zoya was to solve which public problem? What was it to benefit? Let me paraphrase my statement. For me to comment about whether I support leasing or not must be determined by the very objective that made the government took that direction. And the objective was only one, or rather two. Number one, to ensure that cane farmers around Zoya who take their cane to Zoya Sugar, they are paid within this reasonable time, even 7 days. Number two was that the factory must be able to pay the workers that they have contracted, both contracted workers and the casual workers and suppliers. Only two objectives. The objective of raising money for the government was never there. There are only two problems that existed with the status quo. Number one, failure to pay farmers on time. Number two, failure to pay workers and the suppliers. There was no problem that the exchequer was struggling, that our economy was struggling, and we have to sell Zoya to pump money into our economy. So those being the way they are, it only leaves you with the very one simple question to ask yourself. If the main objective was to build the capacity of Zoya Sugar to pay farmers on time, pay workers and their suppliers, then the discussion about the cost of leasing land doesn't exist. Zoya was not to solve or was not to get money for the government of Kenya in any way. It was never part of the objectives of all our engagement. So when you now ask me, I can even ask a very stupid question. Those who are opposing the lease from Zoya, they are saying that the nuclears had been leased to this investor cheaply. Suppose 1 acre piece of land has been leased at 10 billion, and you raise 25 billion. Where will this 25 billion go? They will go to Exchequer. They will go to be embezzled somewhere in Nairobi. They will go to run other government programs elsewhere. So as a leader from Bungoma, I don't care how much money the investor paid the government to get land, the nucleus. All I care is the efforts by the investor to resurrect the factory, to buy new machines for the factory, begin to crush cane, pay farmers on time, and pay employees and suppliers for the services rendered to the factory. The other things about the cost of land is neither here nor there. Those who mislead the public to say that that land belongs to the people of Bungoma are all wrong. That is government land. The people of Bungoma who are living there were willfully resettled elsewhere. They were compensated. You know, they were compensated. And that factory is not going to move anywhere. So me, I support the leasing to that investor, because there is a thin line between a private investor and government when you look at it from a farmer point of view. Yeah? That all the farmers will care is to sell their cane and be paid on time. It doesn't matter whether the person buying their cane is a Kalasinga or is a Mzungu, whether he is short or tall. What matters is that once you supply your cane, you should be paid within a reasonable time, 7 days or 14 days. We have farmers who supplied their cane to Zoya Sugar 5 years ago, and they have never been paid. I supply cane farmers. I supplied cane to Zoya Sugar factory in the year 2014. Up to today, they have never paid me their money. But I've since moved to take my cane to Naitiri Sugar, which is owned by Rai. Today, if they harvest my cane, they pay me within 7 days. Yeah? And even those leaders who are opposing the lease of Zoya Sugar, those who are engaging in cane farming, actually they are taking their cane to either to Busia Sugar, which is a private, West Kenya Sugar, which is owned by Rai, Kabras, which is also not owned by government, or Naitiri Sugar that is owned and run by Rai himself. You know?
People have been asking the question why. There was a question about the process, the leasing process, and also, as you have mentioned, why Rai? That is the question they're asking.
You know, we moved, it has been a long process that began in 2017 when I was first elected in the National Assembly. The late Honorable Bocha was the chairman of a privatization commission at that time, was driving the whole process. He left, it came Paul Otuoma. He drove the same process. There were meetings that were held in Bungoma and in Nairobi. The infamous one is the one that was co-chaired by Wycliffe Oparanya and Eugene Wamalwa and Mwangi Kiunjuri as Minister for Agriculture by then. And the resolutions were out. They recommended privatization of Zoya Sugar. We just refine that privatization and say we lease it for 30 years. 30 years is not a very long time. If I will not be there, other Kenyans will be there. This country will exist for the next very many years. We will pass, other generation will come. Today I have made the decision to support the lease of Zoya Sugar for 30 years. When 30 years lapses, I think I will be around 72 years. If I will be there or not there, I have children. I have about 3 children. They will be old enough. They will take over that discussion to their liking and drive it forward. So we cannot live in denial that 30 years are too long. I don't know whether I'll be there or not. This country must continue whether you are there or not. There are generations. Every day children are being born. Others are being looked for. And if you will not be there, they will be there. And they will chart their own path at that time. And they will move forward. You know, I was not part of the process that evaluated bidders. But I know for a fact that we have created systems that guides government on evaluating and selecting bidders, successful bidders. You know, especially when it comes to public entities. And that question should be asked to PPRA, Public Procurement Oversight something, regulatory authority or something. But insofar as I'm concerned, I know that the whole process was driven by sober Kenyans who are not being driven by any other interest apart from farmers being paid on time and workers and suppliers as well. And of course, the fact that Zoya factory being in an area that has quite very many farmers, the issue of having a miller with a capacity and a proven record, I think that may have favored Rai, because he has got 2 factories in the region. He has West Kenya and he has Naitiri Sugar. And to make the matter worse, there are only leaders from Trans Nzoia who are making noise, and a few from Bungoma, as if Zoya Sugar is the only factory in the country that has been leased. We have all government-owned millers in Kenya has been leased out to private individuals, private investors, private firms. Have you heard any noise in Kisumu? Have you heard any noise in Homa Bay, South Nyanza? You haven't heard any noise, you know. Only Anyang' Nyong'o said something and it was misquoted by the media houses, which Anyang' Nyong'o, being a professor, he retracted and he issued a proper communication. So they are all aligned. They are all in support of those millers. There is nobody who knows how to do demonstrations and throw stones better than people from Nyanza. But they haven't, because they are alive to the fact that the people from Nyanza who grow cane as a cash crop have a right to be paid their money for cane supply to those factories within a reasonable time of not more than 7 days. Yes.
Okay, Mheshimiwa, as a very senior leader in the Bungoma County, and you're, God willing, maybe you could be the next governor of Bungoma, what is your final advice to the people of Bungoma to trust this process, or to answer the questions they've been asking themselves? Should the lease go ahead? Wale wanasiasa wanaendelea kuongea, what should happen?
The lease was finalized. The miller was handed over to Rai. The factory, as we speak today, for the next 30 years, it belongs to Rai. I have been told that they have already disbursed 150 million to pay the arrears of the workers, including the pension that was deducted by the factory, but was never remitted to the pension schemes. I am aware that Rai is doing an assessment with the factory to identify obsolete parts that will be replaced, and to identify the processes that will have a brand new machine, so that the efficiency of the factory can return back to at least 85%, 85, 90%. I am also aware that all the employees of Zoya Sugar will be given 12 months to work without being disturbed. Then after 12 months, those who are willing for early retirement, they will be granted that opportunity in accordance with the laws of our country. Those that Rai will feel he doesn't require them, he doesn't require their skills, because he wants to automate the most parts of the factory by employing computer-aided technologies, programmable logic controllers. You don't have physical human beings testing the quality of sugar by putting it on their tank, or using their eyes to look at the color of their sugar. That will be, the computers can be able to give you that. So if he will require that at that time, it doesn't require some specific employees, those employees would be required to leave the factory in accordance with the laws of our country. 12 months. Those who feel that they don't want to work for I, and once you are on a salary and you can also apply for another job and move to another employer, they will be free to do so. So, in a nutshell, the decision by government to lease out Zoya Sugar factory has benefited the farmer, the workers, and the suppliers.
Mheshimiwa, you mentioned the politics of the region taking center stage in this issue. Yesterday, or early this week, starting this week, we saw the governor of Trans Nzoia was arrested and charged for matters related with his county, graft in his county. As a leader from the region, do you think, how do you take this issue first?
Number one, Governor George Natembeya is not the first Kenyan to be arrested. I have also been arrested severally on other issues. When the police arrest someone, it is in accordance with the laws of our country that there is a conflict that needs to be resolved by the court. And a conflict that has to be taken to court to be resolved begins by police arrest or a police summon and arraignment of the said party in court before a judge. That is what happened. And on the same day when Natembeya was arraigned in court, I also had around more than 6 people from my constituency, Kimilili, were also being paraded in court in Kimilili on various allegations, trespass, assault. So the fact that George Natembeya appeared before a court of law cannot be subject for my discussions, because there are very many Kenyans who go to court every day. Even as we speak today, thousands of Kenyans have taken plea in court on various offenses and various allegations. The position of an individual being arrested, to me, is not exceptional. There are very many Kenyans who are arrested who go to court. And going to court is just a judicial process that Parliament enacted a law that wherever there is a conflict, today, if you go to report to the police that I have obtained money from you with false pretense, if I have assaulted you, the police, the system, will take me through the same process. And you don't begin to mention the names. It is the system. It is the laws that we put in place. Yeah. So there is nothing unusual, nothing to worry about, nothing extraordinary, nothing that even warrants people to begin destroying properties that because Natembeya had been arrested. There are very many Kenyans who were arrested. Those people were even protesting in Kitale town yesterday because their governor had been arrested. Some of them have ever been arrested before for various allegations, for various conflicts. So the country should move on, the county should move on, Kenyans should continue doing what they do. The people of Trans Nzoia should continue to engage in the activities that will afford food on the table. They should continue doing what they do to get money, to run their families. Natembeya being arrested is just a process which is normal. It is not peculiar to him himself. it is not unusual. It's very usual.
Mheshimiwa, what do you think of the sentiments that his arrest or whatever the case, the charges that are placed against him, whether he did it or not, are being pushed because he's jostling to become the official spokesman of the Western region? As a leader from the Western region, what do you think about that?
You know, when a person takes plea in court, then the burden of proof shifts to the prosecutor. We should not speculate and appear like we are investigators who have the evidence. Do not have the evidence. The evidence is with the DPP. When he will have his day in court during hearing, the evidence will be adduced. His lawyers will interrogate and poke holes in the evidence presented before. You know, I was also accused of shooting an individual at the eve of 2022 elections. I cooperated with the police. The evidence was produced in court. I was acquitted on no case to answer. So people should not worry. If there is a conflict, the only institution that is mandated to resolve that conflict is a court of law. So the evidence will be, we should not be in a hurry to begin interrogating the evidence that whether there is enough evidence or not. We should wait when Natembeya will have his day in court. Then we will be able to follow the proceedings and see what the ESCC will produce to support the allegations. But what I know is that you cannot fabricate charges against a sitting governor. You cannot. We will wait to see.
Okay, Mheshimiwa, just a final one on that. We have seen him making forays into, for example, Bungoma County. You're aspiring to become Bungoma governor. As a leader from maybe the neighboring Trans Nzoia, what do you think about that?
That is his own ambitions. He never consulted me when he decided to run for governor of Trans Nzoia. Either I never consulted him on my next political moves, and he's free to develop ambitions. Good for us. And at the end of the day, it is what we put in that will get us to where we want us to be. And when a man advances to their goals, to their destiny, they are free to do so. So the forays, you say he moves around, blah, 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 blah. It's none of my business. That is his own political ambitions. It's just a matter of wait and see. Because I am running to be governor of Bungoma. So that after I've been given that position by the people of Bungoma, it is what I will do with that position that will determine whether I progress forward or not. So when time comes to interrogate Natembeya as to whether he's a good leader or not, we will make that decision not on the basis of what came out of his mouth, but it will be on the basis of the tangible development that he initiated and completed that are beneficial to the people of Trans Nzoia on the ground. That is what will make us make that decision as to whether he's a good leader that we can follow him or not. If he will be a good leader that we follow him, we will follow him. Because we live in a country that interdepend on each other. And being a person from my region, and Kenya at large is that Kenyans will always coalesce around a person that we think will save our country. Yeah.
Now, Mheshimiwa, finally, I know I will request some other time so that we just sit down and try to discuss and interrogate your ambitions of becoming Bungoma governor. But just as a final aspect, for the years you've been Kimilili MP since 2017, what are these things that you think you have done for the people of Kimilili that warrant you or will make you the best candidate? Because that will be the barometer for people to measure and see what has Didmus done for Kimilili, so that we should upgrade him or give him the position to become the governor of the entire Bungoma County. And what will make you stand out in the position of Bungoma County governor if you are elected? But we'll have some time to discuss this, but you can just give us some highlights of that.
When I was first elected a member of parliament for Kimilili constituency, there were around 18 schools that were mud-walled. And we had around 4 schools that the learners were purchasing education under trees. So I came up with an ambitious program of eliminating all mud-walled schools in my constituency, and to ensure that no child of Kimilili would purchase education under a tree. That one we managed. And as I speak today, I have revolutionized the education infrastructure in Kimilili constituency, that today if you do an aerial view of Kimilili constituency, you will see more than 40-story buildings housing magnificent tuition and administrative blocks. That one I have done. I have also, historically, there are very few counties in Kenya that had more than 2 Huduma centers. Bungoma is going to benefit from my efforts. We are currently putting up a state-of-the-art Huduma center. I was told by the CEO of Huduma center that Huduma center is the best in the country, and we are completing it in the next 1 month. By December, that Huduma center will be fully functional, and the people of Kimilili, Mount Elgon, Tongaren, Webuye West and East, and part of Kapchai will not have to travel all the way to Bungoma in search of government services, but they will get it from there. I'm also completing one of the best tuition blocks in a primary school in our country, called Kamkuya AC Primary School, where we are putting up a 17 tuition block, a single-story building that will provide home for 18 classrooms and all administrative offices, staff room, the office of the headmaster, the deputy, and the heads of departments. In the same school, we are also renovating the old 21 classrooms, put tiles and cabro so that it can be a real center of excellence. I have put in place modalities to ensure that by December this year, we will have refaced 20 schools that were built in 1960s, in 1980s, to new modern classrooms with all tiles, cabro from the gates, and the proper landscaping. In Kimilili constituency, for example, if we have a school whose buildings were condemned, built in 1950s, 1940s, like we have a case of a school called Nakalira Primary School. That school was built in late 40s. The same structures still existed. So I have a choice of renovating them. But I felt like they are dilapidated beyond salvage. So we actually moved the school to a new site and put up similar number of classrooms, 18, and a story building that will house administrative offices. That is how serious we are in the Kimilili constituency. I have a foundation that we have invested heavily in healthcare, even though healthcare is a devolved function. We build wards, TB centers, comprehensive care centers, and child maternal health care centers across various clinics within our constituency. We have sorted out our road network. All a majority of our roads are passable. And I have also kind of developed a development blueprint that members of parliament who will come after me will just plug in and play. It's only in the Kimilili constituency where you, as a member of parliament, I have an ambulance that offers ambulatory services free of charge for our people. Yeah. Evacuating them from their home to the hospital for medical attention, evacuating them from one hospital to the other for proper medical attention. And it's only in the Kimilili constituency that we agreed to say that everybody deserves to live in a modern house that doesn't leak. And we came up with an ambitious process of eliminating garage thatched houses and putting up mabati houses that are a bit modern and are not prone to leaking roofs that children have, that people have to stand and find a corner when it's raining at night, because you can't sleep with a leaking roof, that you have to hide somewhere in a corner until when the rain subsides before you begin to sleep. Some are even taking their children, especially those children who are young, to their neighbors when it was raining. So in the Kimilili constituency, I sorted out that one, that the generation that will come will remember me and the team that I've worked, that I will continue to work together, and the people of Kimilili who are alive during my tenure as the member of parliament, that we have done what the previous members of parliament never did. And we have left people with a phrase that says, if our founding members of parliament did half of what I have done during my tenure as a member of parliament, then Kimilili could have realized drastic changes in the infrastructure and performance of our students in the school.
Naam, asante sana Mheshimiwa. I will request, for the purposes of our viewers, we have another sit down just to solely discuss the issues of Kimilili and your ambitions for Bungoma County.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. That has been Mheshimiwa Didmus Barasa, Member of Parliament for Kimilili. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Kosawa?